Imagine standing on a hill, watching your entire city disappear beneath a wall of black water. Thousands vanish in minutes. Families torn apart, and you helpless can only watch. This is not fiction. This is the story of one man who survived Japan's deadliest modern tsunami, and what it cost him. He believed the Pacific was a patient teacher. Every season it scolded them with typhoons, rewarded them with fish, or lulled them with sunset lullabies. And on the morning of March 11th, 2011, he still trusted that rhythm. He was 34 years old, working as an accounts clerk for a seafood wholesaler in Ishinomaki. That day, like many others before it, began in absolute normalcy. He had made a checklist in his pocket notebook: pick up his daughter's birthday cake, wash the car, maybe talk his wife into having yakiniku for dinner. Nothing suggested the world would tilt off its axis that afternoon. At 7 a.m., he walked past crates of fresh mackerel, nodded to fishermen sipping canned coffee, and climbed the stairwell to his second-floor office. The air smelled like salt, diesel, and printer toner. Home. That ordinariness matters. Because when we think about disasters, we see numbers, headlines, videos, but behind each one is someone like him. Someone who had lunch packed, someone who had things to do. Every person who didn't survive had routines, habits, arguments, and dreams, just like he did. And that's the thing about disaster. It doesn't warn. It just replaces your world in seconds. The earthquake begins at 2:46 p.m. The fluorescent lights began to rattle. A colleague, elderly composed, looked up and muttered, "That's a big one." He never got to finish the sentence. The building shifted sideways. Desks trembled. A computer screen crashed to the floor. Glass exploded outward. He dove beneath his desk, knees banging the underside, forehead pressed beside the surge protector. Years of earthquake drills finally made sense. Hands overhead. Stay put. Wait for the world to come back. But this wasn't like the others. This wasn't just shaking. It was rolling, lifting, breathing beneath them. It lasted over 2 minutes. That's a long time to believe you might die. When the shaking finally stopped, the office was a fog of dust and broken glass. They stood, dazed, waiting for something worse. Then the phones lit up with the alert. Major tsunami warning. Evacuate immediately. Estimated wave height, 10 meters or more. There was no time to think. No time to wonder if it was real. Because if the sea was coming, it was already too close. The evacuation. Their office sat barely 4 meters above sea level. The designated evacuation zone was a junior high school gymnasium, 2 kilometers away on a hill. He grabbed the backpack he always kept behind his desk, old habit since the Nagata quake in 2004. It had water, a small radio, and sneakers. That backpack, and the decision to grab it, would save his life. Outside, forklifts were abandoned mid-turn. People were running. Families streamed into the streets, some on foot, some barefoot, some shouting names. He joined the crowd moving southeast uphill. Only goal was to gain height. He tried texting his wife, "I'm okay. Go uphill." But the message didn't send. The cell networks were already failing. A helicopter roared overhead, loudspeaker blaring, tsunami approaching, do not stop. That's when he heard it. Not a crash, not a scream, but a low rumble, like thunder growing inside the earth. And then it came. A black wall of water, taller than any building. It didn't wave like the ocean. It moved like a slab. It consumed. He ran. Behind him, cars were lifted like toys. Homes twisted apart. Streetlights snapped. He didn't look back again. The hilltop and the first wave. He made it to the ridge just behind Shinon Junior High. It had been 31 minutes since the quake. He wasn't alone. Hundreds of others gathered on that hill, turning around to watch their entire world vanish. Below them, the city was swallowed. The wave rolled through Ishinomaki like a black glacier slow, dense and deadly. It carried propane tanks, entire homes, even school buses. Fires burst from ruptured stations. Children's backpacks floated past shattered walls. Next to him, an old fisherman fell to his knees and wept. It's hard to describe what it's like to see your home erased. It's even harder to keep breathing afterward. He scanned the crowd. His wife, his daughter, they weren't there. His phone was still dead. And then came the guilt. Should he have gone back? Should he have tried to find them? But logic screamed louder. The second wave might be coming. And it did. The water didn't drain like normal floods. It came in cycles, each one churning new layers of chaos. At one point, 3 buses attempted to turn around. The water lifted them and slammed them into a convenience store. A fireball lit up the harbor. People screamed. Others simply sat in silence. He counted his own breathing because it was the only thing he still had control over. That first night fell, and with it, the temperature. Freezing winds swept across the hilltop. No lights, no power. Only the occasional flash of flame on the water below. Teachers from the junior high opened the gym. Inside, it was humid from body heat, foggy with breath. Blankets were few, mats were shared. He squeezed into a corner between 2 families, knees to his chest, too cold to shake. Someone passed around a transistor radio. The news was worse than expected. Multiple nuclear plants had gone into emergency shutdown. No one knew the status of Fukushima. No one knew the full scale of the tsunami. All they could do was wait. A teacher beside him whispered, "We're alive. That has to count for something." He nodded, though he wasn't sure he believed it yet. The city underwater at dawn, the sea had not gone. It had simply spread itself across the city like a wet, black carpet. He walked down from the hill, or rather, waited. Mud was everywhere, thick, sucking, and ankle-deep. Cars lay stacked on one another. Houses were gutted. Photographs and pillows and shoes floated in alleyways. The coastal expressway had snapped. The road curled like paper. He ignored all of it and kept walking toward his apartment building. Toward the place where his wife and daughter had been just hours before. The building still stood, but barely. It leaned slightly, its windows shattered, its lobby filled with mud. Inside, everything was gone. His home had been emptied by water. Found a photo album bobbing in the stairwell. In it, his daughter, dressed in her kindergarten uniform, laughing. He pressed it to his chest and didn't cry. Not yet. Missing. The government had set up a triage center on a ridge road above the city. There were whiteboards, handwritten names. 3 categories: located, missing, deceased. His wife and daughter missing. He waited there all day. Every time a bus of evacuees arrived, he ran forward, called their names. He thought he saw his daughter. Twice, he was wrong. Someone gave him a small bowl of miso soup. It was the first thing he'd eaten in almost 48 hours. That night, he slept against a wall. No dreams, just the sound of the ocean, still chewing the city apart. The reunion. On the 3rd day, a military truck arrived from Sendai. Inside were dozens of survivors rescued from rooftops and upper floors. One of them barefoot, wrapped in a silver emergency blanket, was his daughter. She saw him before he saw her. "Papa!" she cried, her voice dry from sea air. He ran to her, held her tighter than he'd ever held anything. She was cold, but alive. Shaking, but whole. And then she told him. Her mother had lifted her onto a rooftop, told her to stay, and had gone back inside to help a neighbor's baby. That was when the second surge hit. She never came back. Recovery. He didn't stop moving. Not even then. He joined cleanup crews, spent his days pulling debris from the streets, shoveling mud from rooftops, searching for anything anyone's still missing. They found bodies, they found wedding rings, found whole rooms, untouched, dropped blocks away. The smell of salt and death never left. One day, while clearing a small shop, he opened a jewelry box under a fallen fridge. Inside, dry and undamaged, was his wife's wedding hairpin, a pearl wave crest. He held it in his hands and finally cried, muffled his face in his gloves so no one would hear. A volunteer placed a hand on his back, said nothing. It was enough. The years after summer came, then winter, and then summer again. He and his daughter moved into temporary housing. It's just a metal box on a school field. But it was theirs. She went back to school. He helped elders file paperwork. They rebuilt, slowly, he told her. Mama is helping the angels rebuild the sky. This was the only truth he could live with. On the first anniversary, they went to the seawall, released a paper lantern. He wrote 3 words on it. Thank you, Ion. It drifted far until its light vanished over the horizon. A decade has passed. They now live inland, far from the shoreline. There are emergency kits at the door, evacuation drills every year, chargers, radios, bottled water. His daughter memorizes routes to higher ground, like song lyrics. She never jokes about earthquakes. People ask him why he tells the story. Why reopen old wounds, he tells them. Because forgetting is a second kind of death. The people who were lost deserve to be more than numbers. They deserve to be warnings. They deserve to be remembered. If even one person hears this story and decides to pack a bag or run instead of wait, then his wife's sacrifice has created something, purpose. The sea remains, he still visits the ocean. Some mornings he just stands there, listens to the waves. The sea is not evil, it's just immense and utterly indifferent. He presses the hairpin she left behind still on a string around his neck. He breathes in, breathes out. Life, loss, tide, return. And in that rhythm, he whispers her name, and every other name still held by the water, so they might live a little longer on the breath of the living.